Welcome to MMA on the Rocks. My name is Bill Welker. You are listening to episode 338 of the podcast. Unless you happen to be joining me live on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube to catch the show live, subscribe on one or all of those platforms. Turn on your notifications so you can join me live. Today is Sunday, November 12th, one day removed from UFC 295. More importantly, one day removed from Veterans Day. So I hope you told all of the military veterans in your life how much you appreciate them and thank them for their service. And I will do the same here on this platform. Thank you to everyone who has served and to everyone who is currently serving, all those brave men and women stationed around the world who will be veterans at some point. So why not? Why wait until you're veterans to say thank you? I'll do it right now. So thank you to you all for protecting our freedoms here. I know it's a scary time out there in the world right now. So definitely wishing the best to everybody out there who is doing their duty, protecting us, and, hoping the dust settles sooner than later on a lot of things globally. But we're here to talk about mixed martial arts. So let's talk about UFC 295, Madison Square Garden, the most famous arena in the world. I have a lot of great memories of Madison Square Garden. I grew up in New York, as many of you well know. Saw some awesome concerts and sporting events and WWE there. I was just talking to somebody about this last night. I think it was SummerSlam 1992 that I saw at Madison Square Garden. I don't remember. But my buddy Sam Roberts, who you may know, he does the Sirius XM morning radio show with Jim Norton, and he's still very big into the WWE world. His dad used to get us tickets to go to the WWE events, and that was awesome when we were in middle school, 10, 11 years old. There was nothing better than being able to go to professional wrestling. So yeah, shout out to Sam, who actually was on episode 12 of MMA on the Rocks. I had him on to discuss, I think it was right before CM Punk was about to fight because I didn't know anything about the guy. So I interviewed Sam to ask him about his background to see if he could give me any insight. And of course, we all know how that turned out. So, and we talked about Brock Lesnar and talked about some other things. That episode was actually filmed or recorded rather. So there was no video of MMA on the Rocks at the time. So it's audio only. It was recorded at the Sirius XM studio where they used to record Opie and Anthony. For those of you who grew up in the Northeast like I did, you probably remember Opie and Anthony. So if you want to check out a good throwback episode of MMA on the Rocks, episode 12 was a fun one. I was a little less comfortable on the microphone than I am now. Not that I'm some kind of professional broadcaster or anything. I still do this mostly under the influence and mostly for fun. But let's get into it, right? So I have to start here. I have to start with my friend of the show, Matt Steamrolla Frevola, fellow New Yorker, grew up on Long Island, spent time in Tampa, Florida for college where he was training at Gracie Tampa South, and moved back to New York, now training with Longo Weidman back in Long Island. So he has his fight at Madison Square Garden. Huge moment for him, main card of the pay-per-view. And he gets caught by an up-and-coming fighter that nobody else wanted to fight. Matt answered the call. He said yes. He gave Benoit Saint-Denis an opportunity, even though the man was not ranked and Matt was. I think Matt felt like he needed to pay it forward because Drew Dober gave him, that same opportunity, and Matt was able to capitalize on it. So he paid it forward to Benoit Saint-Denis, and he paid the price for it. It was an exciting fight while it lasted. It seemed like Matt couldn't quite get settled down in there. We saw some grappling exchanges. He was able to get Benoit down. He got swept, and then Benoit was throwing what looked like a body kick, and I would have read it as a body kick as well. So Matt kind of braced for the body kick, and at the last minute, Benoit turned the knee up and over, and it became a head kick. And I'm sure it was a damn hard one because I know how hard Matt Frevola's head is. So what are you going to do? It's a game of inches. So he gets caught on the biggest stage of his career, main card, Madison Square Garden. But from everything I've seen, I haven't spoken to him, but from everything I've seen, he's having a great attitude about it, which is to be expected. If you know the Steamrolla at all, or if you've heard him talk at all, he's such a positive guy. And because of that, I'm sure he's going to bounce back. He's going to be back stronger. He's going to have a tough test in front of him for his next fight, I'm sure. But he's going to be really well prepared. So hopefully he takes some time and rests up and gets himself a few bacon, egg, and cheese bagels and then gets back on the grind, which I'm sure he will. Credit to Benoit Saint-Denis, man. This is a tough sport. When you get to know people in this sport, it can really break your heart sometimes. When you see people that you're friendly with and that you like get in there and get hurt, it sucks. Especially when it happens with a guy like Benoit Saint-Denis, because you can't even hate the guy. He gets on the microphone and he's totally classy and respectful. And, he seems like a really nice dude, and he's an absolute killer at the same time. So credit to him. He just got a huge win. As of probably Tuesday, he's going to be ranked in the top 15. And I imagine people will continue avoiding him. There's not a whole lot of Matt Frevolas on the roster that are just going to say yes. But I wonder who would. I think Bobby Green would be a fun fight. Benoit Saint-Denis and Bobby Green would be awesome. I would love to see Dan Hooker if Dan decides he's staying at lightweight. Dan Hooker and Benoit Saint-Denis. Rafael Fiziev and Benoit Saint-Denis. Tell me that wouldn't be an exciting fight down the line. Yeah, and I wonder if Matt will be dropped out of the top 15 because he was ranked 14th going into this fight, and he was one spot ahead of Drew Dober, who he has a win over. So, maybe he won't even be dropped out of the top 15, and maybe he can still fight up. There's some interesting fights for him there as well. I mean, Steamrolla and Bobby Green would be a fun fight also. Let's see. Joe with 3 E's says Steamrolla versus Patty next. I mean, Steamrolla has been calling out Patty for the longest time, and Patty wants no part of it. I don't blame him. If I was the UFC, I would keep him far away from the Steamrolla. Also, if that's a guy that they want to really build up and get him close to contendership, they're going to have to keep him far away from guys like Matt Frevola, because he will absolutely demolish him. But I would love to see that payday for Matt Frevola. So I'm all for that idea. Let's do it. Matt Temple, 3-2 on his picks. So if you guys aren't aware, my buddy Matt the Mechanic comes on the show. We do episodes on Thursdays exclusively on YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, where Matt will predict the entire main card, and I will criticize him on his picks. But this is the first week that, he was actually on the up and up. And I did horribly this week because I picked a parlay. You guys know me. I typically don't give picks, but I decided to actually play a parlay, and I bet money on the 3 fighters on the card from Law MMA. So, of course, Matt Frevola, Nazim Sadikov, and Dennis Bazookia. And obviously we know how that all turned out. So Joe also says Steamrolla versus Money Moicano. That's a fun fight. That's a fun fight as well. Moicano is dangerous since he's moved up from featherweight for sure. Yeah. All right. So I had to get that out of the way. I had to address that first because Steamrolla is a buddy of mine. So I wanted to make sure that I led the show with that. So now let's rewind and start at the main event here. Alex Pereira becomes the new light heavyweight champion, defeating Jiri Prochazka. And the light heavyweight championship has had like kind of a weird history for the past year or so, because Jiri had to give up the title. He had a shoulder injury. So then Jan Blachowicz fights whoever he fought. The name's escaping me right now. I'm sure I could look it up. And they fight to a draw. I'm going to have to pull that up now because it's going to bother me. Oh, Magomed Ankalaev. So Magomed Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz fight for the vacant title. They fight to a draw. Dana White gets pissed off, and he says, neither of you are going to be the champion. We're going to do Jamal Hill versus Glover Teixeira in Brazil, like immediately. Jamal Hill becomes the champion. Then he gets injured, has to vacate the belt, and then Jiri Prochazka winds up fighting for the belt that he vacated in the first place. So that's how we got here. And this was a fight that, if you guys have been listening to the show, I've been calling for this fight ever since Pereira beat Izzy for the first time. I wanted him to move up immediately to light heavyweight when Jiri was the champ at the time, and I wanted this fight to come together. It didn't disappoint. It was an exciting fight. I mean, these guys were clipping each other. Jiri looked a little more light on his feet, a little more wily in there. He had a lot more tricks up his sleeve. He got caught in kind of a weird guillotine in the first round, and he was able to weather it and drop to a high crotch and was able to take Alex Pereira down and sneak his way out of that guillotine. It seemed as though he had such an easy time with the takedown that if the fight had gone on, he probably could have gone to that well a few more times. Ends up getting dropped in the second round, towards the end of the second round. And Mark Goddard stops it. And, a lot of people thought Alex was landing some illegal elbows as Prochazka was going down. Maybe not. It's kind of hard to see. He's got that giant, like, samurai ponytail or whatever he had. So, maybe it was hard to see if he was hitting the back of the head or not. Must have been hard for Mark Goddard. Of course, I criticized Mark Goddard right away. You guys know he's not my favorite referee for a plethora of reasons. So I was very critical of him off the bat, saying it was an early stoppage and that he shouldn't be refereeing these big time fights anymore. I went and did an Instagram story about it saying pretty much exactly what I just said. But, then after the fact, Jiri kind of came forward, honorable guy that he is, and kind of admitted that he was out. So it looked like he was fighting back. He was trying to grab the legs of Pereira, but, he says he was out. So, maybe he was out. Maybe it was a good stoppage. I always jump at the opportunity to pick on Mark Goddard, but maybe he was able to see that in there. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So that's that. We have Alex Pereira, who just got inducted to the Glory Kickboxing Hall of Fame. I don't know what that really means to anybody. Apparently, there's only 3 people in it. So now there's already talk about him being one of the greatest combat sports athletes of all time. He was a 2-division champion in Glory. He's now been a 2-division champion in the UFC with only like just over 10 fights in MMA, which is insane. Like nobody's ever done that. Nobody's ever won a championship in the modern era of MMA with only 10 fights. That's a crazy accomplishment. And of course, he was able to fast track to that title shot because he had the wins over Israel Adesanya in kickboxing. So that's why, he was able to get the fast pass to the middleweight championship, wins it, loses it back to Izzy, then moves up to 205 pounds, where he basically belongs, gets a questionable decision win over Jan Blachowicz, and then, kind of gets a questionable finish over Jiri Prochazka, but here we are. At the end of the day, everybody's just going to see what's in the record books. Nobody's really going to remember the details. They're going to see that he was the middleweight champion, and then he went on to become the light heavyweight champion. And he accomplished the same thing in the last sport he was in. So the guy is just championship material. He's a stone cold killer. And apparently the Jamal Hill fight is next. They had Jamal Hill there. It was kind of awkward, but it seems like they couldn't confirm that he's clear to fight. So that got a little weird, but, great. Let's make it happen. Let's keep playing musical chairs with this light heavyweight championship. I think it's awesome. Light heavyweight was, it was always one of the most exciting divisions. You had the Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz feud. You had Chuck Liddell and Randy Couture trilogy. You had so many exciting fights at light heavyweight over the years. And then, of course, when John Jones went on his run, he just dominated that division for so long. And we saw so many great performances out of him until he eventually relinquished the belt to move up to heavyweight, which, we were supposed to see him defend the heavyweight championship, but we all know what happened there. Tore his pec. And here we are. So that fight was replaced with what became the co-main event, Tom Aspinall and Sergei Pavlovich fighting for the interim heavyweight championship. Now, I'm kind of curious what's going to happen with this, because let's say John Jones isn't going to come back, because he was talking about how the Stipe fight was going to be his last fight. Maybe he was near the end. So an injury like this, completely torn pectoral muscle, is not something you can just, take some Advil and get back in the gym. Like, this is going to be an 8-month recovery before he's even able to train again. And he's no spring chicken. So, and then when he gets back in there, is he going to want the Stipe fight? So then are we going to have, 2 guys fighting for the undisputed title? And then is Tom Aspinall going to defend the interim? It's kind of weird how they just kind of left Stipe out of this equation. Are we going to see Stipe again? Like, he was at Madison Square Garden. Why didn't they set up that fight, Tom Aspinall versus Stipe? I mean, it seems like if John Jones isn't going to be ready for like 8 months to a year, it would make sense to do Stipe and Tom Aspinall, right? In any case, let's talk about the performance. Aspinall gets Sergei Pavlovich out of there 1 minute, 9 seconds of the first round. They had a really awkward like hug sort of thing while Dan Mergliato was giving the pre-fight breakdown and telling them to touch gloves, where they're just kind of like, it looked like they were slow dancing at the middle school prom. Just kind of like zombie arming each other. And then, the fight itself was not the cleanest performance. I watched it last night and then I went back, watched it again today. Aspinall had his chin like straight up in the air, and Pavlovich hit him with a few shots that, if they were a half an inch closer, we might be looking at a different champion today. But Aspinall, was able to move his head out of the way of a lot of those shots, and still with his chin up, he was kind of just dipping back. But he was able to catch a nice counter that put Pavlovich down. So, it's heavyweight, man. And Aspinall weighed in actually heavier than Pavlovich, which is a surprise to a lot of people, because Tom Aspinall does not look like he's that big, right? He's actually 2 inches taller than Pavlovich. I think it's something about his facial hair, or like he has like a baby face, makes him look smaller than he is. So I don't know, but the guy's massive. So obviously he carries a ton of power at heavyweight, and we all know that now, especially Sergei Pavlovich. He knows that. So let's see. Lane 99 says, seems to me someone is anointed best of all time every second week. Yeah, it kind of just becomes a talking point for the talking heads to talk about. Not everyone is as creative as me, whereas instead of anointing people the best of all time, I just like drink whiskey and talk about stuff. So there's that. In any case, moving on down the line, another fun fight, Jessica Andrade and Mackenzie Dern. This was an interesting one. Jessica Andrade was, had her back against the wall, 3-fight losing streak. Mackenzie Dern was on a hot streak. And Mackenzie looked good in the first round. I mean, her striking did not look bad. I mean, she's not at the same gym she was at with Jason Perillo. So I don't know what her training was like for this fight, but her striking has improved so much since she got to the UFC. I mean, it was scary bad in her first few UFC fights, but she's ironed out the wrinkles quite a bit. I would like to see her fight more with her chin down, which wasn't doing her any favors last night, that's for sure. But her hands have gotten a lot faster. She's mixing up her strikes. She gets in and out of the pocket very well. She moves well on her feet. Her footwork looks good. It's just, the defense has to catch up to everything else. And, unfortunately for her, it didn't catch up in time for this fight with Jessica Andrade, who has to be, pound for pound, the most powerful female striker ever. Pound for pound, maybe. I mean, to have that kind of power at 115 pounds is just not something we see. We don't see a lot of big knockouts in this weight class, but Andrade just has friggin' dynamite in her hands. So she's able to snap that losing streak and does it against a really tough opponent, Mackenzie Dern, who I believe had not been finished up to that point. Let's see. Mark Fellows is here joining the podcast. Full disclosure, I lost my bet too, so don't feel bad about your parlay, Bill. Well, I don't feel so bad about losing the money. It's just money. What I do feel bad about is seeing a buddy of mine get hurt in there. Money is just money. Money will come back. So they say. Maybe not. Let's see. Moving on down the line. Obviously, we already talked about Benoit Saint-Denis and Matt Frevola. Diego Lopes, man. This kid is an absolute stud with his emo haircut and everything. If you heard the podcast on Thursday. So he made his UFC debut on short notice against Movsar Evloev, who everybody has high expectations for, and winds up giving him a run for his money. This kid's 28 years old. He's 5'11" at 145 pounds. Like, he's big for this weight class. Just pretty much demolishes Pat Sabatini in the first round, minute 30 seconds. And that's after finishing Gavin Tucker in a minute 38 seconds in his last fight. So, man, 28 years old. The sky's the limit for this kid. And if the fighting thing doesn't work out, he can probably be on the next My Chemical Romance reunion tour or something. Let's see. Steve Erceg and Alessandro Costa. So Erceg has a lot of hype behind him at flyweight, and he's big for a flyweight also. Yeah, 5'8", 125 pounds. That's pretty unusual. But yeah, this dude had a lot of hype. Now 2-0 in the UFC. He pretty much manhandled Costa in the first round. But then, Costa started to come back. I don't think he won a round in this fight, but he at least made it competitive in the second and third. He didn't let Erceg just walk all over him. So credit to Costa for at least, toughing it out and making it a fight. Because at the end of the first round, it looked like Erceg was just gonna obliterate Costa. And that didn't end up being the case. Wound up being a pretty tough fight. All right. Lupita Godinez and Tabatha Ricci. How did you guys score this one? Because the scores were all over the place for this fight. I have them here in front of me. I don't know if you guys believe this or not, but I actually did some research for this episode just because I was curious, because I remember watching this last night and I didn't really have the volume up, but I thought I heard 30-27 for Ricci. So now I looked at the scores, and yeah, Brian Miner scored this fight 30-27 for Tabatha Ricci. Sal D'Amato and Derek Cleary, who I believe are the more experienced judges, had it 29-28 for Godinez. The rounds were different, though. So Derek Cleary gave the second round to Tabatha Ricci, and Sal D'Amato gave the third round to Tabatha Ricci, while Brian Miner gave all three rounds to Tabatha Ricci. So the scores are all over the place. Obviously, it was a really close fight. How did you guys score this one? It seems like a lot of the media gave it either 30-27 or 29-28 to Godinez. So let me know how you scored this one. I don't really have an opinion on it. It was a close fight, but I was just curious what you guys thought about that scoring. So that's why I brought it up. It's all over the place. I always find it weird, like when it's a split decision, but that third judge had it 30-27 for the fighter that lost. That's always obscure to me. Like, what are we looking at here? Like, are we using the same criteria? Are we all being trained the same here? What's going on? I mean, I know flukes happen, and could have been the angle that guy was at, and it looked like Ricci was doing better than she was. I don't know what the explanation is, and we're never going to know because the judges never say anything. So here we are. All right, Mateusz Rebicki, first round submission over Roosevelt Roberts, who, got cut from the UFC for a while and, strung some wins together, came back, and then got submitted with an armbar. 3 minutes, 8 seconds in the first round. So there's that. Here's a fight that I unfortunately have not had a chance to watch yet, even though I had money on it. Slava Claus, Vyacheslav Borishev against Nazim Sadikov. Majority draw in this one. What I understand happened was Slava Claus won the first round. Sadikov almost finished him in the second round with a head kick. So that one was a 10-8. And then apparently Slava Claus won the third round on 2 of the judges' scorecards. So that would make it a draw. Let me know if I got that right. I plan on going back to watch this one. Maybe on a Thursday episode, I can give you guys a little bit more of a breakdown what I think went on here. But in any case, majority draw in this lightweight fight. Jared Gordon, I think the only New Yorker on the card that did well, knocks out Marco Madsen in the first round. And the story of this fight up until this point was the clinch and the control of Marco Madsen. He was doing a good job of making Jared Gordon carry his weight. He was staying tight in the clinch, landing nice knees to the body, really hurting Jared Gordon in there. He was clipping him with punches too, but then he started spamming attacks. He was spamming the lead hook. And Jared Gordon, he's very experienced. He started getting reads on Madsen. So by the fifth or sixth time, whatever it was, that he got caught in that clinch of Madsen, he realized he could spread him out a little bit. So what I mean by that is, in the beginning, Madsen's clinch was tight. So his elbow was bent. He was keeping Jared Gordon in tight, and he was able to land those knees. Once you get stretched out in the clinch and your arm is extended, you need to let go of the collar tie in MMA. And that's hard for a wrestler to comprehend, because in wrestling, when you grab a hold of a collar tie, you hold on to it for dear life. There are just so many setups from the collar tie. So even though his arm got extended, he held on to the head, and Jared Gordon was able to land an uppercut in the clinch, which kind of softened Madsen up to extend the arm. And then he came over the top with an overhand. It was kind of like a hook overhand that put Marco Madsen down. And, Jared Gordon's a stocky dude. He's got a ton of power. I heard from guys who saw him during fight week and said they had no idea how he was going to get down to 155 pounds by the weekend, because he was looking pretty thick. So he put that power on Marco Madsen and got the big finish in front of the hometown crowd. His post-fight speech was awesome. He said how, years ago he was doing heroin in Port Authority, which runs right underneath Madison Square Garden, and now he was fighting. He's fighting for the UFC in the arena. It's such a great story. The guy's overcome so much. It's hard not to root for him. So, at least one New Yorker was able to get a big win and get a special moment at Madison Square Garden. So congratulations to Jared Gordon. John Castaneda, unanimous decision over Kyung Ho Kang. Joshua Van, unanimous decision over Kevin Borjas. And then the first fight of the night, which immediately killed my parlay, Jamal Emmers knocks out Dennis Bazookia 49 seconds in the first round. It seemed like, to me, Jamal Emmers was able to freeze Bazookia with pressure. So he kind of blitzed in on him a few times, and Bazookia didn't really react. He kind of stumbled back a little bit. So Emmers was able to really reach with a right hand and put it right through the guard of Bazookia and drop him. And, Bazookia just couldn't react in time. He got caught looking at the lights, and Jamal Emmer's experienced dude capitalized on it. So credit to him. Great performance by Jamal Emmers. Not a great night for the Law MMA boys, who go 0-2-1 on the night, which, was definitely not predicted by me in my parlay. But, luckily, for the sake of the show, a lot of you are still audio-only listeners, and haven't gotten around to subscribing on YouTube yet. So, maybe a lot of you didn't hear that I picked that parlay, but it doesn't matter because I told you I did anyway. So, the theme of the night, here we are. I don't know. What did you guys think? Do you think this fight lived up to, the original booking, which was going to be, John Jones and Stipe? Do you think it was still the value? I'll tell you guys, full disclosure, I paid for this card, and I thought it was entertaining. So it's crazy how much these pay-per-views have become now. It works out to like $90 with the tax and everything. So we're gonna be breaking a Benjamin pretty soon on these pay-per-views before you know it. But probably by the end of 2024, I imagine. Let's just get away from the pay-per-view model, can we? I would rather pay like more monthly and just get every card included. So hopefully they work out something like that. Make it like $22 a month or something. I'll cancel Netflix and just pay for the ESPN. $22 a month, you get every card. Done deal. Seems to me like they would make more money that way, but what do I know? I'm just a whiskey and MMA podcaster. Mark says the card was better. He says, hell yeah, give me two guys in their prime over a 50-year-old Stipe. Yeah, Stipe was like limping into the arena too. He wasn't looking so great. I wonder if he's got an injury or something going on. All right, so we go from Madison Square Garden back to the UFC Apex next week. UFC Fight Night 232 or UFC Vegas, whatever it is. We got Brendan Allen and Paul Craig in the main event. And of course, we'll take a deeper dive on this card on the Thursday episode this week with Matt the Mechanic. He's going to give his picks for the main card. Mark says, if you subscribe to Fight Pass in Asia, you get the pay-per-views included. He says included for free, but it's just included, Mark. It's not, because it's not free. You're paying for the subscription, right? So pay-per-views are included. All right, I got to move to Asia maybe. Except that I already can't deal with the times of these, of these fight cards. I can't have the fight card starting at 4 o'clock in the morning. So maybe I won't move to Asia. Maybe I'll just stay here. The West Coast would be appealing. Like they're the ones that have it made, where the cards consistently start at like, I don't know, the pay-per-views start at what, 7 p.m., 8 p.m. That sounds perfect. Let's see. So fun main event here. Brendan Allen, Paul Craig, both very talented grapplers. I think Brendan Allen probably has the advantage on the feet. Paul Craig probably has a slight advantage in the submission game. But, it's a game of inches. So a slight advantage, like, what does it really do for you? I think it's an interesting matchup. They're both really long middleweights. I'm glad to see Paul Craig at middleweight because I feel like he was doing well at light heavyweight. Obviously, he broke the former champ's arm in Jamal Hill, but just slightly underperforming. You're just slightly undersized. And I know it's a big jump, 205 to 185, but I was glad to see him make that transition. Now here he is in the main event. Co-main event, the undefeated Michael Morales, 15-0, getting in there with Jake Matthews. So this is going to be a big test for Morales because Jake Matthews is battle tested. Morales coming from Ecuador. And he is obviously undefeated in the UFC, 4-0 if you count the Contender Series fight, 15-0 overall. So this is a dangerous kid and moving up on the card. Chase Hooper and Jordan Levitt, interesting fight. These are two like pretty intriguing characters squaring off here. They both have like this weird innocence about them. You know, like they're both. Chase Hooper is still like a child, so there's that. And Jordan Levitt still, he has like a childlike innocence about him. But these two guys are, you know, they're going to get in a cage and try and fuck each other up. So I'm here for it. What else looks good here? Luana Pinheiro against Amanda Ribas. I like it. A lot of unfamiliar names on this card. There's a lot of fights on this card. 14 fights. All right. I guess we'll leave it. We'll leave it at that. We'll go over some more of this card and break down the main card in more detail on Thursday. So again, make sure you tune in Thursday nights around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And now Matt and Mark are arguing in the comments. Don't make me come back there, kids. Break this up. Subscribe on YouTube Thursday nights around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sometimes 9:30, depends when I get home from the gym and eat and shower and all of that. In the meantime, while you're waiting for that show, you can get on reaper1.co, order yourself some MMA on the Rocks merchandise, over the top, under the influence t-shirt, tank top, or hoodie. You can use the promo code MMA Rocks 10, save yourself 10% on your order right there. I will put the links directly in the show notes as always. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for sharing the episodes, for leaving comments, for leaving feedback, for leaving criticism. I appreciate all of it. Cheers to you all. And until next time, cheers, everybody. Goodbye.